Hello, souls and demons. Today we have a fairly short story called The Lady in Yellow, written by Twisted 1988. So, you know the drill at this point. Sit back, grip your seats, enjoy, and all of that other sort of stuff that you do when you listen to a story. Hi, my name is Knox. That's as much info about myself as I'd like to give. I'll get right into telling you about the time my parents changed, and not for the better. I grew up with loving parents. My childhood had been filled with great memories and love. My dad was a hardworking man that took care of my mom and me. Things were great. That is until we met this lady. She was thin but curvy, curly brown hair and the most beautiful blue eyes. Even as a prepubescent boy that had little interest in girls at the time, I remember being struck by her beauty. Every time I saw her, she would be in a flowing yellow dress. She seemed very subtle at first. She befriended my friends on one of their special date nights when they went out as a couple, and I would go to Grandma's. In the beginning, it would just be an occasional visit. But over time, she started to come around every day, it seemed. As their relationship progressed and they became close friends, I began to notice a change in my parents. On a few occasions, the lady in yellow didn't show up. My parents would be frantic. I would be on the back burner, and all that seemed to matter to them is if the lady was coming to visit. I would stay in my room during this time because everything I did seemed to agitate them. Things steadily regressed from that point on. My dad stopped going to work, which was weird for a workaholic like him. I would hear him brag while visiting with friends about the kind of lifestyle he could provide for us. He took pride in his job and his ability to give us a comfortable life. After a while, food started getting scarce around the house. I would have to eat whatever I could scrape together from the cupboard. Chip sandwiches, peanut butter mixed with dry cereal. It wasn't ideal, but it kept the hunger pains away. Then one day a man stopped by. He said he was with the bank and wanted to speak to an adult. No one would tell me about what was going on, but my parents seemed upset after he left. I remember how much I started to hate the woman in yellow, and that hate getting me in trouble once. She had stopped by and, in a hunger-fueled rage, I told her how I wish my parents had never met her, and how much better things were before she came along. My dad yelled at me and sent me to my room. My mother sat on the couch crying. I hoped I hadn't upset her too much with my outburst. "I'm sorry, Mom." The lady in yellow convinced them to move with her. She said she had plenty of room and food for all of us. I thought maybe she isn't bad after all. The next day we packed our things. Dad punched an address into his old GPS that was mounted to the windshield by a suction cup, and away we went, off to our new lives with the woman in yellow. We left the city and eventually found ourselves on some curvy back roads in the middle of nowhere. Trees lined both sides of the small road, creating a tunnel effect. Finally, we turned onto a gravel road and made our way to the gate. The gate opens, and to my amazement, I saw a small community of hundreds of people all dressed in yellow. The houses and buildings were all yellow, even the dogs had yellow collars. Soon we would be led to our new house, a small yellow cottage. I was so disappointed because it was much smaller than what I was used to up to that point. All my clothes were thrown away and I was gifted with yellow replacements. Not long after moving in, I walked into our little yellow cottage to find my dad yelling and screaming at the lady in yellow. She never said a word. She politely got up from the sofa and walked out the front door, throwing a soft smile my way as she closed the door behind her. A short time after that, both of my parents got sick. They would stay in bed, shivering and moaning, sometimes even vomiting. I hated seeing them like this. I wasn't sure how at the time, but I knew the lady in yellow was behind their sickness. That night I awoke to the sounds of my mother screaming. My dad entered my room and took me from the house. As we walked through the living room, 3 men had my mother held down as she violently struggled to free herself from them. Her screams muffled by the gag that had been placed in her mouth. Her eyes met mine and she began to cry. And what I can only imagine were muffled pleas trying to escape the gag. "Is Mommy okay?" "Mommy is fine. She's just very sick," my dad said as he quickly closed the door behind him. Before I can ask him any more questions, my thoughts are interrupted by the voice of the lady in yellow dress. "Don't worry, little one. We will get your mother the help she needs." Her soft and gentle voice had a calming effect on me. At that moment, I trusted that she wanted to do the right thing. I noticed her hands were so smooth and soft as she placed her hand in mine. She led me up a dirt path with my father not far behind. Soon, we're standing in a door to what I could only describe as a temple. It was a dome shape, and on the top of the dome sat a massive statue of a man with the head of a steer. "What is that?" I asked as I raised my hand to point at the statue. A smile spreads across her face as she admired the statue. "That's Moloch, my dear child." Without going into any explanation, she leads me inside and down a narrow walkway in between rows of pews that led to an altar. In the middle of the wall behind the altar sat a big metal door. Above the door is a painting of Moloch seated on a throne with children kneeling at his feet. We continue until we are all 3 standing in front of the metal door. The lady in yellow slowly reaches out and grabs the pull handle, then gently opens the door. I'm frightened as flames meet us from a flaming furnace. "What's going on, Dad?" I say with a terrified tremble in my voice. He doesn't answer. He just nervously ran his hand up his arm, pulling up his shirt sleeve to reveal numerous scars and scabs. He picks at one of the scabs, peeling it off and putting it in his mouth to chew. "Where is it?" "We had a deal," my dad said to the lady in yellow. In a no longer soft, comforting voice and more of a demanding tone, she responds, "You have to make the sacrifice to get your fix. As much as I would love to, I can't do it for you." He only hesitates for a moment as he grabs my arm and starts leading me to the entrance of the furnace. "Leave him alone," my mom's voice echoes throughout the domed temple. I turn to see her charging the altar. Before my dad can respond, my mom, at a full-speed sprint, lowers her shoulder and drives it into his gut. He lets out a grunt as the impact sends the air out of his lungs, and he stumbles back, falling into the furnace. His screams torment my memories as he is burned alive. Mom wraps me up in a loving hug before being interrupted by the lady in yellow screaming at us. "What are you doing? You are ruining the sacrifice!" My mom is silent. Her only response is a right hook to the jaw of the lady. There is no counterattack as the lady in yellow's body slumps to the floor, and her legs fold awkwardly under her body. She was out cold. My mom picks me up and is in a dead sprint towards the exit of the temple. We burst out the door just to see some more men running towards us. My mom grabs my face, forcing me to make eye contact with her. She points to the woods to our left and says, "There's a small town about a mile from here. Just head straight that way as fast as you can and don't stop until you see someone not wearing yellow. I'll hold them off as long as I can." She then kissed my forehead, and with tears in her eyes told me she loved me and shoved me towards the tree line. "Run!" are the last words she said to me. And that's what I did. I ran. I ran as fast as I could until I heard a loud bang. I turned around to see one of the guys my mom was fighting with holding a gun, my mom on the ground. The man made eye contact with me, and with a satisfied smile spread across his face, he pointed the gun at my mom laying on the ground and fired off 2 more shots, never breaking eye contact with me or losing that evil smile. Once again, I ran. I ran until my lungs begged for mercy, but even then I didn't stop. Fear and adrenaline kept me going until I broke through the tree line and spotted a convenience store across the street. The store clerk appeared worried and a little panicked at the sight of a small boy running into her store. "Oh my God, honey, are you all right?" she said while stepping out from behind the counter. Relief flooded my body. I never thought I would be so happy that someone was wearing a blue shirt. I ran to the store clerk and wrapped my arms around her leg. "Stay here, I'm calling for help," she said as she ran back behind the counter. Picking up the phone and frantically dialing the emergency number. With the realization setting in that my dad tried to sacrifice me and my mom was dead. I dropped on my knees in the middle of the store and cried until the cops arrived.